and how we came about it was Amy and I, we were trying to have another baby. We had our daughter, and then it was one of those, well, we wanted to have a few more kids. So we tried for like 5 years. And so nothing was going on. And we thought at first, we thought something was going on with Amy because she had an infected cesarean. So we maybe thought that something happened internally. But her OB at that time was like, well, you're fine. Have your husband give a sample. So I gave a sample. In fact, I gave 3 samples just to make sure. And there was nothing in it, no sperm whatsoever. And so then what happened was we went to a doctor in Spanaway, did some blood draws. He checked my prostate, and I had to give a semen sample. Then I had to pee, which is right after, which is not easy to do. That is an extremely challenging thing to do. And so after all my prostate and all that stuff was checked, he was pretty much like, you have no testosterone. We can give you some shots. And so, but with Amy and I, we just felt like something was deeper. You just don't, at 38 years old, you just don't drop testosterone like that. And so my uncle knew a guy that knew this doctor. And so we went and saw this doctor in Puyallup, the name of Dr. Kimmel. And Dr. Kimmel was one of those doctors, you knew he was just crazy, highly intelligent as soon as he walked in. A little awkward kind of a guy, and you knew, it's like, man, this guy, he's got something brewing. And so he's like, well, what do you do for your profession? And so what it was, I was like, well, I'm a painter, but I've been in the industry at that time for like 20 years. Because I needed a job at a high school, and it was summertime, and I painted, and my summer never ended. I've been in the industry ever since. And he's like, well, what's the most deadliest thing you've ever painted? Well, I was like, well, I've painted zinc and aluminum and anti-fouling and epoxies and all this stuff. And I said, but the one that does come to mind the most is a product called tributyltin, which is no longer allowed to be sprayed in the United States, by my understanding. Because what it does, it attacks, the chemicals are so harsh into it that it attacks your central nervous system and your reproductive system. And so he did some research on it real quick, and he looked at me, he's like, I bet you got a pituitary tumor. And so the next day, he's like, let's do an MRI, and let's see what we come up with. So we did an MRI. The following day, like at 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning, I left, and at 11:30 they called and they said, you have a pituitary tumor, and it's huge. It's about as big and round as your thumb on your pituitary gland. Then they wanted me to come in and to do blood draws. So I did some blood draws, and a couple of days later, I go back in to see the doctor, and he goes, you have prolactin. You have a prolactin tumor. And I'm like, what do you mean I have a prolactin tumor? He's like, well, he goes, have you noticed any kind of discharges or lactations or anything else coming out of your breast? And I was like, well, no. Why? And he's like, well, he goes, if you had a couple more points of estrogen, you could produce breast milk. And of course, this was down at the downturn of the economy, and in 2008, and we're self-employed, and we're hustling. We're starting to hustle for cash flow. And I was like, well, why don't you give me some? Because I'll paint, lactate, ball it up, and sell it. We need to make some money. What's kind of fun is that right after I got done with these jobs, it was my first neurosurgery. The first neurosurgery was when they went up through my nose. And by this time, I'm just kind of nocturnal because I'm living off of 5 hours, 6 hours of sleep. I'm painting, at this one building, and then I'm painting at the other building. And so then, after I stayed in the hospital for like 3 days, then I went home and I had nothing going on for like 7 weeks. And of course, I couldn't lift anything heavy. But I did brew plenty of beer before I went in for this thing. as much as I could. And, and then things kind of went a little bit, and then, but I'm still taking my shots, all that goodness and joy, creating testosterone. Well, then Amy gets pregnant. And, I mean, it was such a miracle that Amy got pregnant. And she carried this one for a few months, or I think like a few weeks. And we went in, and we were locked down that we were pregnant. She was pregnant, and we were all up in arms and clapping and all that stuff. And then a few weeks later, we go in, and there's nothing. There's still, we still have that little one in there, but there was no heartbeat. And it was, it was such a sad time. And I'm thinking, and I'm asking God, I'm like, Lord, how much more can we take? How much more can we take between, the economy and, we're not making hardly any cash flow. We're doing what we can. We've been faithful to you. We're faithful to the church, but we stayed in the game. Because there's only, and I believe that's where a lot of people miss their blessings, because they cut out of the game before it ends.